Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Uh, got the loving life. Got the like, share, and subscribe button down below for anybody that would like to support the channel there. Please share this one. This is a must um, in order to comprehend what's going on in your community as it relates to yourself and the rest of the community and your community leaders. We're going to discuss what's called SLUGS, state and local government securities. This is where you're deemed a resident by your own voluntary actions and self-admittance and supplying those data elements without knowing the very terms that you're using. And this is called unconscionable contracting. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start out with the what is a security. And before we do, I guess we got Steve with us here tonight. Greetings, Steve. Glad you could join us. Steve's the one that turned me on to the SLUGS, the state and local government securities. And this is what I've been piping on for a long time, is the terms resident and United States citizen. And this is where it's established. And now we're getting a better configuration of how they're doing the bonding and stuff by presumption. How you doing tonight, Steve?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Good, good. I really appreciate you turning me on to the SLUGS, Steve, because after I've done some research, like I said, it's called unconscionable contracting because there are undisclosed terms, otherwise definitions, that most people don't realize. And here in Iowa, when it comes to the resident, I looked and looked and looked, and I've looked in the municipal code, I've looked in the county code, I've looked in the state statutes, and I find nothing for resident definition, with the exception in the Iowa code, they have a resident determination. Now, if you understand the English language, determination is equivocally the same as definition. It's what defines the very term of resident. So it has resident determination is for income tax purposes. And if we relate the income tax, what an income tax is you have to invest in something first. And then you get a return on it called profit. That profit is called an income, which you're supposed to pay taxes on. Nobody understands this. They think they go down to McDonald's, get a job, and that's income. No, you didn't make a monetary investment. You invested your physical labors, your sweat equity, not a bond. And that's a definitive difference. So we're going to look at what securities and security bonds and stuff like that mean. You got anything to go on before we get started, Steve?
Well, I could just share my experience on doing the SLUG.
Absolutely.
So what I did was I was on treasury.gov, and this is after I got my documents back from the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis, where they had said that I was because I had sent my documents. This is when this had to be 2016, 17, I guess. So I had sent my birth certificate and all that to the Office of Budget and Management, and they had zeroed out my credit. And all the documents that I sent to the Office of Budget and Management, birth certificate, long form, short form, name change, I sent all that stuff to the OMB. They didn't send it back to me from the OMB. They sent it back to me from the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis. And when they sent it back, I got a customer ID and a transaction request ID number from them. And then they sent another letter saying, stop calling us, stop trying to do things with the Treasury. You're basically kicked out of the Treasury, is what short form they said. So when they said I couldn't purchase any more bonds through the normal Treasury route, that's when I said, let me just try to see what this SLGS is. And I noticed it had a username and login. And I said, well, let me just see what that's all about. So I just started digging in, found the forms for the Bureau of Fiscal Services, filled out a couple of forms. And I said, well, I have a business and it's an unincorporated association. So I said, let me just fill it out. So I filled it out. Sent the stuff in. I think you have to direct mail it to some place in, I want to say it's Virginia. But once it came back, and well, the documents didn't come back, but I think I got a letter back. But the curious thing was I got a phone call back, and I was helping a family member move, and I was driving 3 hours. So I wound up talking to somebody from SLGS who said that I couldn't possibly have an asset with SLGS. I said, okay, well, then why did you send me the stuff back? Or why did I get the letter saying that I had this? And what's the deal? What's going on? I said there's something got to be there with my name on it. And he's like, well, there's nothing here with your name on it. And we literally went back and forth for about 3 hours and agreed to disagree and got off the phone. About 2 weeks later, they sent me a username and login to SLGS. And when I logged in, it didn't go anywhere. It's like they had a dummy screen built for me. But it's like they gave me the username and login. But then when I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, this is literally how they do all their projects. Bridges, roads, hospitals, schools.
Absolutely. The transmitting utility.
Yes. And that was the other thing. I had went and, there was a form, I think it was an IRS form. I filled out, no, it was a UCC form. And they were arguing with me about being a transmitting utility. I said, no, the name is a transmitting utility. That's exactly what it is. They said, you can't put that on there. And I said, well, it's on there. And I signed it. So run from there. Don't keep coming at me with, I'm not in there. So anyway, when I looked at all this stuff for the SLUGS account, basically what I saw that they do is they capture, so if they're doing a bridge or a road or whatever, they capture so many names in that they basically are going to make the bond on.
Yeah, in that zone.
Yeah, in that zoning. So that's who they secure on the bond, but then they change, there's nobody's name on there.
Right. It's just a bunch of, so you got a zone in the city, and it's marked out by its borders. Yes. The city decides that they're going to do a road upkeep project, and they're going to tear up the road and put in some new sewage lines along the curb, say.
Or like they've done here, they expand it to 4 lanes as opposed to 2 lanes.
Right. So they got a zoning planning project for a construction contract to do so. They implement that through state statutes, and the residents that live within that zone, that's whose cost it goes to, because they use those residents as a pooled investment set of investors.
Collateral.
It's collateral, and they pool
each of the names,
and they can't put them in each of their names, so they pool them together and put it in the municipal's name.
Yes, and they call it whatever the number they call it, or East School, or the Red River Project, whatever the project is, they name it that project, but the collateral that backs that project is up to 80% of the value of each of those estates.
Correct.
So they're literally just leveraging the estate to generate income, or to go and sell the bonds that they're going to sell, because they say that this amount of people they can only go up to 80%. This is what I found out about how government projects work, period. They can never maximize the 100% value of the collateral. They can only go up to 80%. And It's all subjective to what the project is and what other projects have done in that community as to how much they're going to leverage it. So that was the thing, is that he told me there's no way I could be there because I wasn't a state and local government. And then he told me there's no way.
You're not a state or local government, but you're a government entity known as a resident, otherwise a United States citizen, known as a United States business. Right. That's the presumption. And when you get that birth certificate bond, that's a security, which is material fact evidence, a documentation of evidence that you are proprietary because it's your fucking name on it.
Yeah, so that's how they get you. And again, I never got any full access, but when I looked at how what you can see on any. So, like if they were building a new school, you can see every dollar, every single dollar that went into that project from its inception. So
Yeah, that's those CAFR funds.
Yeah, it's. And when I say every dollar, the first research team that comes together saying we're going to get this person to go make an assessment on the land.
Yep.
We're going to go. This is how much we're going to do for case study to go find the land.
And I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff because, like I said, both my parents worked for the government all their life. My dad was a real estate appraiser, so he was the one that the tax assessor hired to do all the appraisals on such properties.
So you're familiar with the process. So the thing is, with the SLUGS account from the Treasury, you can see every dollar that has ever been spent on that project from its inception. So my thought was, and I'm not sure, I'm just speculating, but just based on that, I just thought, well, hell, they probably got every single dollar they've ever spent on you since you were born.
Yes, it's established into the enumeration at birth, the vital statistics jurisdiction, and that is a establishment of a burial trust so that everything that goes out from your estate throughout your lifetime, when you die, the state can administrate in probate that estate to pay off creditors despite an executor's will.
See, I think it's even further than that at this point, especially when you told me about the 2016 electronic registry of everything.
Yep.
I honestly believe that when you go to court, they pull this up and they can see every dollar you've ever had and everything that they've ever done, because it's all the private side of the ledger. And if you sit there and say, oh, well, I don't have $200 to pay for this ticket, and he's looking at your accounts and he can see you got
that's your
2,000 there, he knows you're lying.
Yeah, that's your national index. That's the Interstate Identification Index with the FBI's fingerprint file, both the civil and criminal file at the national level. Interstate Identification Index.
So that just leads me to think that there's, even every time you get arrested and they take your fingerprints, that's just another vehicle that they create off of your name.
Correct.
The bottom line, I think, is that, and this is where I ran into dead ends, because they absolutely refused to give me any more access to SLGS than what I had. And they never justified anything to me. They just said, well, just do what we said because that's what we said.
Yep.
So that's the long story of it.
All right. Well, now that we got that then, and I appreciate that because that's going to give us a foundation of what's going on here when it comes to that that administration and conservatorship that you were talking about in your probated estate. What we're looking at here is what's the difference between employee versus independent contractor versus corporation to corporation. Now, this is something I learned when I was rather young. Remember, I had a paper out when I was 10. By the time I was 13, I had a couple lawns and stuff that I started taking care of. That wrapped up by the time I was 18. I had my own seasonal lawn care situation. I was an independent contractor. From there, I ended up getting in trouble with the law, went to prison, got out, determined that, I like the independent contractor stuff. So I worked for the meat packing plant down south of Waterloo for a little bit till I got enough money saved up to start my own sales and marketing. Another independent contractor, knowing that all I got to do is just let them know, hey, I'm an independent contractor. I don't have to fill out none of your paperwork. Back then, it was like an I-9 form or something. I don't know what they call it today.
That's it. That's all they've ever needed was your I-9. And once you fill out the I-9, they got you.
Right. And so on that I-9, it's just like a W-4, exempt. The private independent contractor is the correct term. Independent contractor leaves out the private. I am private and independent, and I provide my own contracts. I do not need the corporate structure in order to contract with your corporation. However, if you're going to force a corporate contract, you have to make sure it's equal consideration, equal benefit, quid pro quo. So if there is a detriment to me, like say a tax or an insurance, then you also have to equally share that by equal consideration, equal benefit. Where's my tax and my insurance in that equal exchange? See, and this is what people don't understand. So let's get into this real quick. It says, if you've traditionally employed full-time employees, you might have some questions about the different types of work arrangements that have gained momentum over the past few years. With the rise of the internet and tech companies that have enabled the gig economy, more workers are eschewing full-time employment for the flexibility of less permanent working arrangements, known as the contingent workforce. This blog post will look at 3 different types of contingent workers, whom companies can engage, and will examine the pros and cons of each. By the end, you'll be equipped to make more informed decisions about the best way to classify your own company's workers. And like I said, if you're going to take upon that residency, folks, with that United States citizenship, that is a business. Know how to use it, and it's not going to be detrimental to you. This is why I go forth and do all this research on the definitions and stuff, because that's what makes it unconscionable. When you become conscious of it, then you can put it on the record. And if they refuse to accept it, they're the ones denying their own laws, rules, and regulations, and that puts them in dishonor of their very own contracts that they're offering. Most workers categorized as employees work for a single company, full or part-time, and are what is known as payroll worker or contract employee. They get the security of consistent employment, even if it is temporary on a fixed term, and access to the equipment and training necessary to perform the job. And the company controls many of the terms of the arrangement, including when, where, and how the work is accomplished. As a result, these employees are given an employee tax form at the end of each year. In the U.S., this is a W-2 tax form. No. Tell them I want a W-4. See, you're supposed to receive a W-4. The W-4 you can put on there exempt. The employer has to pay employer taxes and withhold the employee's taxes and remits to the government on behalf of the worker. This is not allowing for that exemption. See, it's a voluntary tax withholding agreement between an employee and the employer, not the employee and the IRS. And I don't give a fuck what contract that corporate entity has with another corporate entity. I am not a corporate entity. Employees also get certain protections that we'll discuss in the next section. This is kind of like what Steve talks about with his employment with the NFL. He had to give up certain rights for the protections of an insurance that would cover him if he was harmed or damaged during that play. It was a safety precaution.
Well, we have the collective bargaining agreement, and the collective bargaining agreement bypasses OSHA rules because OSHA requires a safe work environment. And when you accept the collective bargaining agreement, you're saying, I'm going to waive my rights to a safe work environment. I'm going to take the collective bargaining agreement as my insurance for anything that happens to me while I play.
Yep. And David, it's going to be a learning process. We're still learning this ourselves. So, but like I said, with the city council meeting this last week or Monday here, the ball is now rolling, and I'm going to be going forth and talk to the mayor about all this stuff and let him know I know my capacity in this community is not a resident. I am not a United States citizen, just like I told him in the meeting. And what I'm going to be talking to him about is these slugs, and that I do get to buy and present them to certain members for that investment as it's already presumed. And first of all, before I get any further, I want to say greetings, Iman. How you doing tonight? And greetings, Queen Kamika Makita. Thank you for joining. How are you ladies tonight?
All is well, brother. All is well.
How you doing, Queen? Okay, well, it doesn't sound like she's got audio or something. Maybe you got to go out and come back in or check your audio settings. In the meantime, welcome. Thanks for showing up. And let's get on with it then. Goes on to say, if you've ever wondered, this is important about them 1099s. Like I said, they're vendor forms, and they're literally titled Battle of the Forms. And it says, if you've ever wondered what a self-employed position means, for example, in the U.S., a 1099 worker, It's simply the classification of a worker as an independent contractor instead of an employee. So even as an independent contractor, as they state here, you're still supposedly required to fill out those UCC forms. That sounds like a corporate entity that's regulated in a corporate fashion still. So again, that's why I assert a private independent contractor, not of corporate capacity, because I'm not incorporated. I'm not even organized. I'm merely in development stages. And if it ever gets to that point, then so be it. But until then, I have equal rights. An independent contractor operates as an unincorporated, individually owned business. And in many ways, and remember, this is a specific term here too, individually. In many ways, these workers can be viewed as opposite of an employee. They are responsible for paying their own taxes. So again, they're still being considered subject to taxes. That's what the 1099 forms are. They're tax forms, vendor forms, both at filing time and quarterly throughout the year. And they aren't entitled to the rights and responsibilities of an employee, such as notice periods for ending the relationship, paid annual leave, contribution to retirement pension plans, health benefits in the U.S., etc. They are distinct differences. You have to contract them, just like Steve does. There are many. Go ahead.
So I've done this a couple ways, and I haven't mastered it. So let me make it crystal clear. The number one way I did it was with an LLC. With
Right.
that LLC in Missouri, you have to have other members. Otherwise, it's just considered a single entity. So it just passes through as just you. So
Right.
it's still classified as a single individual. But if you
Right.
give 9% to at least two other people, which one could be your kid and another could be your mom or dad, but basically they don't have any voting power, but they have ownership.
Right. Equity.
Yeah, then you don't have to truly, I mean, you're just going to show that the money went through and it paid you and gave them something, and we're only talking 9%. But that's Missouri. You got to check your state and make sure you understand what that is. But that was the simplest and easiest way to stay in the matrix, but kind of have a foot outside of the matrix, just kind of so you can know. But be ready for an audit because it's coming. And
well, yeah, and it's no problem. You don't need to fear the audit.
yeah,
The problem is just making sure that the members know what their responsibilities and duties are, because even though they may not have a purchase in it, they still have rights. And this is the purpose of having an LLC. This is just like an authors guild, where you can each support each other when it comes down to the definite terms and conditions. That's the knowledge. And again, that's the true benefit. That's the true credit. That's the true value.
So again, the LLC kind of operates as that foot in, foot out, because you could say, hey, I got a private contract with these people. Well, if it's your mom and your kid, I mean, as long as your kid's of over 18, they can contract and there's no problem. Otherwise, it's just considered an inheritance if they're under 18. But when you say it, you have to be mindful that, case point, my LLC, this is back when I was doing houses. I went to Jamaica and it cost me $9,000. I wrote the whole thing off. And needless to say, the next year I got audited and they asked me what was it that I, did in Jamaica that was part of my business. I was just flipping houses in Kansas City. And I said, well, I handed out business cards when I went there. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, the plane left Kansas City and went straight to Jamaica. So I handed out business cards on the plane. So that was business. The thing that people don't understand is you just have to try. You don't have to make smart business decisions. You just have to try. So in my attempt to make business, even though I didn't generate any business from going to Jamaica, they can't argue with me if I stick to my guns.
Right. And that's why I say it's important to understand this isn't a matter of being incorporated or organized. It's a matter of development. Everybody has the opportunity to develop, and that's all it is. So let's continue on. It says there are many different types of independent contractors, but a few examples include freelance writers, graphic designers, photographers, consultants, and many other self-employed business owners and skilled workers that specialize in a trade. Corporation to corporation. Companies can also hire corp-to-corp workers by engaging the services of an incorporated contractor. This is the personal services that we're dealing with as a resident. You present that ID when you go get a job. You're operating as a corporate entity in contract with another corporate entity as if though you're incorporated by presenting an incorporated municipal charter through a resident ID. The arrangement of a corp-to-corp versus an independent contractor is similar, but it means you'll pay an LLC or corporation rather than the worker for their company's services. This is what protects the LLC because they're required to pay the entity and not the people. So once the entity receives the payment, then all the disbursements are guaranteed by the LLC itself. The members will make their claims themselves. This is done through your, say you got an LLC that owns a bar, restaurant type setup, and you got all your employees as part of the LLC. Each one has to keep track of their hours just like any other job. But instead, you've got a community till that comes in, and it's operating with the corporate municipality offering that slug through an LLC. It's incorporated for that advantage. So the municipality's going to take care of all the taxes and everything as an LLC because there's a limited liability with the very municipality that gives them a permit to do business. The arrangement of corp-to-corp versus an independent contractor is similar, but it means you'll pay an LLC or corporation rather than the worker for their company's services. Then the company is employing those various members, and they are providing their personal services. In a regular employment job down at McDonald's, that's what you're doing. When you go to court, that's what you're doing. Anytime you sign a document outside of a association like an LLC, where you're a member of a private association, then you're partaking in a public association. If you're not asserting your private rights, you're not qualifying that signature in your private capacity, then you're obviously acting in the performance of a public duty. That's the presumption. In addition, the contracted core-to-core worker must own an LLC or corporation. If Nike hires a shoe design consultant who owns Savvy Sneakers LLC, for example, Nike is engaging the work under a corp-to-corp arrangement. So you're still considered a corporate body as an LLC. You better know how to act like it.
Yeah, I did that with all of my contractors. I had electricians, plumbers, carpenters. Sometimes I had independent people that just come and do certain jobs, but I would just pay the company, and they were responsible for their taxes, but they just got their money. And I don't know if I generated I think I just did 1099s with all of them.
Yeah, because that was the route produced for due process in that venue. That's why I'm on people about making sure that if you're going to be filling out those UCC forms, you better know what you're doing and be incorporated or established in the proper way with that documentation. Otherwise, anything you miss, they'll catch and they'll use that against you, and it's undisclosed usually.
So another big point about that is I keep speaking of the illusion of perfection, and the IRS wants to make you feel like, oh, you have to do these things perfectly. That's why you got to get all these experts and stuff. You don't. I can't tell you how many years I made mistakes. The main thing is that you fix them. You know,
right.
Hey, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do it that way. So as long as you're always open and willing to fixing the mistakes, 9 times out of 10, I would say 10 out of 10, they always adjust because they're really just pirating your money, just to be clear. But if you want to, when you make these steps in the matrix, you don't want to take big leaps. You want to take small steps so that you remain functionable while you're trying to get out.
Yeah, it's a developmental thing, folks. So the entity is the person. Yes. Is an LLC important to have? No, it's just a thing you can do, but again, it's a matter of understanding how it works so you can use it to your benefit. And that's the problem. There are many things that we can use in this commercial system. It's a matter of comprehending how they work so others can't use them against us, particularly those that have been indoctrinated into these corporate fictions as if though they have some kind of authority simply because their boss says so. It again comes down to the comprehension of what's being done. And yes, we're data providers in intelligence in return for use of Federal Reserve notes and unemployment retirement benefits. Correct. We are deemed when we're born Medicare qualified government employees to provide data for that statistical record.
That's the main thing, is that you're keeping the record, because that's all they're doing for you in the first place, is they're keeping a record because you don't know how to.
Correct.
So once you learn how to keep your records, then you say, hey, I don't need you guys to do this for me anymore. And
right.
that gets to the greater thing of the occupation. But you can also, if you're going to do this, it's LLC with an unincorporated association. That way you have your fallback as your unincorporated association, because they have no jurisdiction over it. So they can't pull books or numbers off of that association. You just have to prove that you're not trying to commit war.
Right. And yeah, will that be a corp-to-corp business entity for use of LLCs? The use of an LLC is the capacity of a corporation to corporation, because you've got multiple members that can stand in those capacities, whether they're formed or not. Yes, everything is a matter of the integrity of the record, so it's just a matter of correcting the mistakes.
Yeah, and just don't, it's usually somebody's got to be watching you to see if you've made a mistake. They're going to try to get you to volunteer. And the bottom line is, don't tell them any more than you got to tell them.
Right.
But you report, and if there's errors on that report, you tell them you'll fix it.
Yep.
That's the main thing, because they're going to come at you and say, oh, you made a mistake on line 7. You said $2,400 and it was $240. Okay, transposition error. My bad. I'll fix it.
Yep. Absolutely. So basically, we are at all times giving up data elements for a service. Yes. Just make sure you know what data elements to give up and still be able to obtain that service. Many people are just giving way too many data elements or giving the wrong data elements. A widely recognized commercially identifiable number may be used in lieu of the name and address. Very simple statement that I wish people would learn and understand, that you can give a number in lieu of the name and address, and if that's so, where, why, and to who, and what do you get in return? Evidently, it means you can still get the same thing in return if you provide the name and address. It doesn't state that you don't. It just says in lieu of. So let's continue on. It says here under SLUGS, special state and local government securities, SLUGS, special non-marketable certificates, notes, and bonds offered to state and local governments as a means to invest proceeds from their own tax-exempt financing. Interest rates and maturities comply with IRS arbitrage provisions. SLUGS are offered in both time deposit and demand deposit forms. Time deposit certificates have maturities of up to 1 year. Notes mature in 1 to 10 years, and bonds mature in more than 10 years. So you have deposit certificates, 1 year, notes, 10 years, bonds, more than 10 years. Demand deposit securities are 1-day certificates rolled over with the rate adjustment daily. So the deposit certificates you can put in as time deposit or demand deposit, or you can issue notes or bonds. The next one comes from the Treasury Direct. And it says, the first one there says, SLGS daily rate table. Says, how do I read the SLGS daily rate table? And you can get into that if you want. Goes right there. And I forgot to put these links in the detail section, so I will do that when I'm done. But these two here is what I want to look at. It says, who may buy SLGS? Only government bodies. Remember we were talking about that government earlier? I said, well, you're a government entity, a government body of some sort. You were conferred a nationality of United States citizenship. You are a holder and therefore have the right to enforce it. Or other entities that issue state or local government bonds may buy SLGS. They may buy SLGS only if the proceeds from those state or local government bonds are subject to yield restrictions and arbitrage rebate requirements in the Internal Revenue Code. Arbitrage again. Then it says, how do I? Do you guys understand the implication there? This is why I say read between the lines. When it says, who may buy SLGS? Only government bodies. Read between the lines there and understand that the United States citizenship is such a government body. It's known as the United States business under the government of the United States. You buy SLGS through SLG Safe. For more information on how to apply for and use SLG Safe, see more about SLG Safe. Is this what you looked at, Steve?
That's exactly what it is. And this is where I concluded that you buy these, this is the futures market. Because again, if you're talking about the city building roads, bridges, hospitals, they're going to sell those on a private market or a secondary market, which is fundamental investment. So I concluded that had to be the futures market, where the growth of a city is based on the projects they have. So
correct.
That's what I concluded.
Yeah, and if each year you provide a one-year project by getting a state bond, which is a security, and put that security forth to the municipality as an investment for 1 year, you can put like $250,000 to it, and you get 10 of those a year.
Oh, you just do, when you look at transit, there's a street over here that they're taking out all the median, the concrete around the medians in the middle of the street, and they're doing that for about a mile. And there's that one, and then there's another one on the other side of town doing the same thing. So they basically come up with the projects, they put them in a pool, they put them in a basket, and then they take them to Wall Street and trade it. It's like, what is this going to do? It's going to open 2 more lanes of traffic. So if it's going to open 2 more lanes of traffic, how much more commerce is going to be able to go over that road? And then they do all their calculations through the planning and city government of what the estimated returns are going to be. So they sell the futures on the market.
Right. And so what you can do is you can take, like I said, that time deposit, which is a certificate of deposit or deposit certificate, and that's a CD. Okay, that's just like a 1-year CD. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. What you're doing is you're investing for 1 year, and you're going to get the percentage return rate on that 1 year. Or you can do it as a 10-year note, or you can do it as a plus 10-year bond.
And that's what I think the city does, is the city and state, they do those projects based on the time that they could be completed. And once they're completed, what's going to be the increase in taxable income for that area or region. And there may be an instant return because they may turn around and sell a road to somebody. I don't know. And these are all things that they do, in my opinion, in the city government to continually make money. And they got the projects in the 1-year term, and the 5-year term, and the 10-year term.
Yeah. And it says here, when do I subscribe for SLGS? It says, if the subscription is for $10 million or less, you must submit your intention to buy through SLG Safe at least 5 calendar days before the issue date. So that's not too bad. That's a pretty good return. If the subscription is greater than $10 million, you must submit your intention to buy through SLG Safe at least 7 calendar days. Still not bad. It says, why do I have to subscribe so far in advance? I don't think it's so far in advance. It says the U.S. Treasury requires advance notice of issues and redemptions. You guys understand what that's saying? It's not saying anything else. The U.S. Treasury requires advance notice of issues and redemptions. You're the issuer. You're going to offer it to the municipality and grant them the right to redeem it, so long as they recognize you as the principal, as the investor, and get the return on it, to better forecast for the cash needs for the U.S. government. In other words, what you're doing is you're allowing it to be a credit source and not a debt. As bond counsel for the issuer, again, it's talking about the issuer. What TIN do I provide? Tax identification number do I provide for the subscription? The TIN for the issuer or the conduit borrower? So if you're going to be the issuer, then what are you doing? You're loaning. They're using the term borrower. Who is the borrower getting what from? He is getting a loan from the issuer. It's all about loaning and borrowing. Understand the simple language. Anybody got any questions on that before we move on to the next one?
That's the credit debt system.
Yep.
You're not moving money. You're moving credit versus debt.
Yep. And you've got to come forth as the creditor.
Well, that's the hard part. But yes.
The next one is, and it says, how do I sign up for SLG Safe?
Bureau of Fiscal Services.
Yeah. This is Treasury Direct, and it's going to work with Bureau of Fiscal Services. This is who, when you issue when you get the utility bill, and you send it back to the utility company to under an assignment to their trustee, the directive is to deal with the Treasury, which is intermediated by the Bureau of Fiscal Services. That's why that's going through the Bureau of Fiscal Services in Missouri and stuff. And I think the top dog is the one in Ogden, Ohio, which is the Treasury and IRS, both combined. But it says, note, it usually takes about 3 days to process an application for SLG Safe. If you need to lock in, should be if you need to lock in today's rates and don't yet have an SLG Safe account, we suggest you contact someone else involved in the deal that has SLG Safe access. So they're saying that somebody else involved already has the safe access. Who is that?
Your state and local government.
State and local government and Treasury Direct. So they can't disclose, or they can't close you out of your very own account. That has to be implemented at the municipal level. If they do so, can a municipality issue anything? I wouldn't think so. They don't have any direct communication with the Treasury Direct to communicate about a debt. That's the only thing they can do is collect on a debt that is presumed, or when presented with the proper documentation, accept the grant for redemption from the issuer. What does the SLG Safe administrator do? This is where you got to, and they gave you a logon page, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it went to a. It was clearly going into a database, but they put me out of my own pastures because they didn't want me seeing that. Because again, I'm not logging into, my county. I'm not logging into any project in my community. I'm logging into my name. And because I'm logging into my name, I would only see the transactions that have happened on my name, because because as he said, you have to have a name in the system in order to get a login, and they gave me one. But and again, our system is so they don't do what they're supposed to do. And I think the system is only as fluid as the people that challenge it. Because that's really all I did was challenge.
Right.
Okay, you got a slug safe account for me. Let me see it.
Yeah, and that's the important concept here, guys. We're not challenging the people. We're challenging the definitions and processes that are supposed to be allowed to us as we see them, because we, again, are the ones that consent to be governed, but they only have that power by our consent, which means we have to first delegate it as well. This is what they don't seem to understand about the Constitution. The Constitution isn't self-implementing. It was implemented by the people and still stands as that today. You cannot use it against the people today because some people hundreds of years ago implemented against those who wished it at that time. It still takes, and that's why it was written in there, by the consent of the people so being governed.
Well, the problem is the Bar Association has hijacked
Right.
the system.
Right.
Completely
Even at the this is why I say the attorney, the district attorney and the district clerk are the ones to go after in these processes, because they are the ones that the executive officer, the quote mayor, and anybody else considered an executive officer within the county are subject to the attorney and the clerk. That's who has the ultimate authority in interpretation.
Yes, and the clerks have been dumbed down over time.
Correct.
Because there's bar associates all around them, the judges, the lawyers.
And this is why Texas Rule of Civil Procedure, Rule 12, is so awesome. Because under Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 12, and remember, it's the equality of the law among the states. So if one state implements it, the other states can so use it as well, equally. And under their rules, it says that you cannot hire an attorney. An attorney can only be hired by a board of directors. And a board of directors is only had by people so incorporated as a corporate entity and have a permit to do business through the Federal Reserve under 12 U.S.C. 614 with the incorporated documents and everything, so that those documents can be disclosed publicly in case they cause injury, harm, or damage among on the people, you know, for putting forth a product that kills their babies or something like that.
Or that just denies you of your property. Because
right.
That's really what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's literally, yeah, it's, again, and it goes to that signature in these corporate activities not being qualified, and therefore you're supposedly giving up rights, titles, and interest to property, and that property is the name itself. You can't do that. That's unconscionable. There have to be terms and conditions in there that weren't disclosed, because any reasonable man would qualify their signature and not give up their rights, titles, and interest to property just because they didn't know.
But that's one of the first fundamentals of contract law.
Yep.
Contract law, all terms and conditions are supposed to be disclosed. If they're not, the contract is void on inception.
Yep.
So we're walking around being forced into contracts. We don't know it, but they're not letting you get out of them. And literally, that's where I got them at right now. That's just where I'm at.
Right, and this is why the definitions are so important. This here is from Greenberg Traurig, and they are just a insight. Government policies and business realities converge. And what they're talking about here is determining whether a potential investor is a resident or non-resident for securities law purposes. What we're discussing here is Regulation S under the securities laws. And it says, a fundamental tenet of the federal securities laws is that all purchases or sales of securities must either be registered under the Securities Act of 1933 or qualify for an exemption from registration. The primary exemption relied upon by issuers seeking investors pursuing a visa under the EB-5 program is provided by Regulation S under the Securities Act. Now, why are we talking about visa? Because it's an immigrant investor. You are a foreign investor, folks. The enumeration at birth proves it. The enumeration at birth is an enumeration in one of the states of the Union and not in the United States. Anything outside of the United States is therefore not of like kind. That's because the United States is located in Washington, D.C., and the 50 states of the Union physically are not. Regulation S generally provides that the registration requirements of the Securities Act do not apply to offers and sales of securities if both the offer and sale occur outside the United States. Additionally, Regulation S requires that the issuer not offer or sell securities to U.S. citizens or residents, even if those persons purchase the securities abroad. Not offer or sell securities to United States citizens or residents. So they're selling them to foreigners. Who are they gathering them from? The presumption is that they're gathering them domestically from U.S. citizens and residents. Determining whether an offer or sale occurs outside the United States is a rather simple test. Namely, whether the investor is physically located outside the United States, both at the time he or she is first solicited to purchase the securities, at the same time he or she executes the subscription agreement or other contract to purchase those securities. So it's a predicate that you are both purchasing and offering them for sale. But again, it says whether the investor is physically located outside of the United States, both at the time he or she first solicited to purchase the securities and at the time he or she executes the subscription agreement to purchase those securities.
It sounds like it's a twisted way of buying and selling chattel paper.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you're doing. I bought 3 birth certificates, and I'm physically outside of the United States, both at the time he or she first solicited to purchase the securities, and I will be outside the United States once I file the subscription.
It just looks like slave trading to me.
If the investor is a student attending school in the U.S. on an F-1 visa, the student may not be approached to make an investment while he or she is within the U.S. So this is where we have to determine whether you're in the U.S. See, people have it confused. You're in Arizona. You're not in the United States. You're in Arizona.
But if you got a license or a passport.
Yeah. That's the extension of that citizenship of a United States that lived in the United States or was born in the United States and then moved outside of the United States and now resides in one of the states. The language is particular, folks. To do so would... Go ahead.
This is gymnastics. This is verbal gymnastics.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to do the sawhorse, the rings, the floor exercise. You got to do it all. And you're blowing my mind, and I do this stuff. I'm sitting there like, God dang, this is giving me a headache.
To do so would fail the above described prohibition on offers within the United States. Now, wait a minute. Let's read this again. Determining whether an offer or sale occurs outside the United States is a rather simple test. Namely, whether the investor is physically located outside of the United States, both at the time he or she first solicited to purchase the security and at the time he or she executes the subscription agreement or other contract to purchase those securities. For example, if the investor is a student attending school in the U.S. on a F-1 visa, the student may not be approached to make an investment while he or she is within the U.S. To do so would fail the above described prohibition on offers within the U.S. So it's a prohibition of an offer within the U.S., not within the municipality, not within the county, not within the state. It's saying it's an open offer everywhere but in Washington, D.C. Further, soliciting a student's parents offshore. That parent is an offshore corporate entity. That's where it was imported from. Who then in turn send the subscription material for their to their child for signature, while he or she is in the U.S., also will not qualify because the offer and sale, to the extent the subscription agreement is also signed to the actual investing person, the student, occurs when the student is physically located within the U.S. Again, if the United States is located in Washington, D.C., and the student is located in Arizona, how come everybody is violating this and not accepting that offer outside of the United States because they say, no, you're in the United States? Who's confused, me or them? In contravention of Regulation S, it should be noted that if a parent signs the investment documents on behalf of his or her child while that child is physically located in the U.S., the parent would be doing so as the child's agent, attorney in fact. Across the board, attorney in fact is agent. Across the board, agent is resident, which is an official or agent of the municipality, state, or federal government.
Which is why you can do an unincorporated association and do the same purchase.
Yep. And it's known as a private placement, not an investment. A private placement for redemption. And the offer should be considered to make the student, or considered made to the student while in the U.S. In other words, the long-standing securities law tenet that you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly comes into play.
That's governance over the straw person.
Correct. And you can't do it indirectly without my direct permission, consent, and communication to communicate about a debt.
Well, they jump over that every day.
Yep. So let's get on to the next one. Next one's important, and this is the definition of arbitrage. The simultaneous buying and selling of a security at two different prices in two different markets, resulting in profits without risk. You know, that certificate, that time deposit certificate that I have in my possession, 3 of them, those are obligations and other securities of the United States. Whereas everything else, that's one price, whereas the different market, as in relations to U.S. currency versus Federal Reserve currency. One is a national currency, which we don't have access to except through that bond. That bond is evidence of a United States currency, a United States dollar. And they're forcing us, through a monopoly, a postal monopoly, to use Federal Reserve notes, which is a reserve currency and not a national currency. They're two different markets, two different prices, resulting in profits without risk.
But the Federal Reserve notes are only to be used by military employees.
Correct.
So when you use their notes, you're either an employee or you're violating the law.
Yep.
which is their private jurisdiction, and that's ugh. I'm
That's
sorry.
what that state ID is. Even without a driver's license, a state ID is just merely a contract employee. And
Yeah.
you're using the address as a contract postal unit, a principal place of business, wherein you also have a residence. So it says perfectly efficient markets present no arbitrage opportunities. Perfectly efficient markets seldom exist, but arbitrage opportunities are often precluded because of transaction costs.
That's the way to make sure they make a profit.
Absolutely. So when you go into arbitration, recognizing this, you understand you're the one issuing credit. You're going to put the value to it. You're the one that's creating that quote money. It's called money of account. It's the documentation. That's what money is. It's what I've been saying all along. Money is merely paper. It's commercial paper, commercial instrumentality of paper. And so let's take a look at this blue line or a highlighted section here. It says security. Security, very simply, is exactly that, a piece of paper that proves ownership of stocks, bonds, and other investments. Everything is an investment in the name, and that name is inherently yours, and that piece of paper proves that equity ownership 9/10 of the law above the legal title in the document. Oops, let me share it. Security, piece of paper that proves ownership of stocks, bonds, and other investments. So that piece of paper, 3 of them, birth certificates that I have, with receipts, which shall be issued by commanding officer, so the spoliated owner may obtain indemnity. So I offer them up to the municipality's mayor, like Steve mentioned earlier. Hold harmless indemnification. Excuse me. Hold harmless indemnification. That's at 50 U.S.C. 4305B2 as a directive in the interest of the United States for the account of the United States, since it is a United States business that we're talking about, qualified on the paperwork as a resident by presumption and hereby rebutted for lacking the undisclosed elements that I have now discovered and must put forth to prove it is impossible. Therefore, I have to execute my authority in equal station so that no person shall be held liable in any court. It's across the board, making all parties whole. That's bringing an equality to everybody to be able to execute their own transactions according to the law. And let's start doing it now, because we're all big boys and girls. We're not at war. We were actually born on this land. We are the peaceful inhabitants, and the only way we can prove that is coming forth in peace and proving it. Here's the armistice. I'm giving you notice. Now that you have notice, and you are the commanding executive officer in charge of all the police in this municipality, and of course, this is going to go to the county commissioner and the board of directors and the county sheriff as well as the state troopers and the state police, the secretary, the governor, all of those. It's going to go right up the line. Everybody, notice of agent and notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Listen, guys, I'm the boss. It's as simple as it gets, and I'm doing it peacefully.
It's hard, boy. They are not. You're not going to open this door, bro. I'm telling you. Well,
I know. It's a hard door to open, boy.
this miracle has got to happen. I'm everything you're saying. I'm sitting here right at the door, like, come on, this is nothing. What else do I have to do? I got my sheriff's office moved last week, and they don't even have the address updated on the website or anywhere else. It's still at the old building, but they did update the sheriff's picture that he no longer has the yellow tasseled flag around on his shoulder. So I guess he moved to the land is what I'm interpreting it, but I don't know.
We'll find out soon enough, I'm sure, because if he is one of those sheriffs that knows his stuff, he would be able to tell you. And even if he doesn't want to, his actions and the documentation that you're going to find eventually will show that.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to say this. I don't know when this is going to happen, but it looks like it's about to happen. God willing, soon.
Yeah, and well, like I said, and I'll pull it up real quick for everybody else, that 48 CFR 52.212-5. That is important to understand, folks. This is a federal regulation, and this is implemented for all statutes in all states. They have to comply with this because they cannot acquisition anything for their own interest. It has to be in the interest of the United States, because whether they're issuing securities outside of the United States or not of unlike kind, they still have to prove their ability to show that debt is against the United States, which is obligations or other securities of the United States, includes all bonds, all notes, all deposit certificates, all certificates of indebtedness, all those kinds of things. Those are obligations or securities of the United States because they're the ones that guarantee the security for the states that ceded their jurisdiction to the United States for the very security of being landlocked and not having access to Admiralty Maritime. They have to have that interlocal agreement, and this is it. And it clearly says, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial products and commercial services. It has nothing to do with your private services and private contracts. Those are non-commercial. Those are private. They cannot interfere with private contracts just because they have a public trust.
Yeah, that's what they do, though.
And I wasn't even sharing. My apologies. Let me show you that. That's conditions, contract terms and conditions required.
Well, I'm not sure how versed the entire audience is, but I think the important thing to understand is that they're talking about this being the greatest transfer of wealth. But you're not going to be able to transfer anything if you don't understand some of the stuff.
Right, and that goes again to that electronic record I was telling you about. In 2006, they established the Electronic Records Act, where everything was being converted to a, quote, book entry system, which is electronic. And this is where they take their definitive documentation and enter it in the electronic form. Most of the time, it's just abstract information. And that's all it is. It's abstracts. It's the same thing they do with your birth certificate. That's just abstract information from the original underlying obligation. Yes, private is private. They have no right to deem that your private contract is a commercial contract. It goes to the differences in prices and market values and currencies. They have no right to tell you you have to use their currency. For crying out loud, they admit that you're foreign. How does a foreign entity saying that another foreign entity has to use their currency? That's bullshit.
But that's what they do.
Yep.
So that's the challenge we have, because when you're going into court, they're forcing you into contract.
Yeah, let me pull up another one. This is a simple one. This is a social experiment I wish everybody would follow up on. And go, because I know most of you guys have bank accounts, and that would prove a greater interest maybe in that you should be really concerned about going in and cashing checks at these banks, where that teller is so willing to give you cash across the counter, because it specifically states issuance to reserve banks, nature of obligation, and there's that word again, redemption, and it says Federal Reserve note. That's them dollar bills that you have in your pocket. Read them all. $100 bill, $50 bill, $20 bill, 10, 5, and 1. They all say Federal Reserve note. To be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents, as hereinafter set forth, and for no other purpose are authorized. So are you supposed to be handing that Federal Reserve note over to the clerk at the county store?
No.
Is she a Federal Reserve agent?
She's not supposed to be.
Not that I know of. Am I a Federal Reserve agency or
Nope.
agent?
Well,
not that I know of.
Not voluntarily, no.
So go into that bank and ask that banker, the trustee, the CEO, the big guy in the back office. Tell him you have a real concern about your funds and how they're being appropriated, and you've got one question for him and you want to know his answer. This will tell you the competency and the integrity. Because everyone I've asked so far, if this is so, then why are you handing me Federal Reserve notes if I'm not a Federal Reserve agent and there is no loan contract stating that it's for making such advance?
Because the presumption is you are either a farm worker under the
or an
Federal
agricultural rancher.
Yeah, under the Federal Reserve System, or you're committed a felony.
Yep.
So they got you on either way. So if you don't submit, then they're just going to treat you as a criminal. This is how this is such a perfectly evil system, or it's corrupted to be evil. I honestly feel like everything about it it's mastery, it's genius,
right.
But
so
it's corrupted.
So the said notes shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks, and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. And other public dues. That means taxes, customs, those are all public dues. Okay? What about the private side, the United States dollar? See, that's that different market with a different value. They're denying your access to the actual value, to first and foremost, and they're denying you access to the full value of that estate. Pure and simple. You're not supposed to be touching those. And I'll be damned if everyone I've asked just shrugged their shoulders and said, oh, well, what are you going to do about it?
Because we're indoctrinated. We're captive. You when they want to do what they want to do, they're going to do it. They try their best to pretend that you have rights. In actuality, all of that stuff that came over from Operation Paperclip is in full effect.
Yep.
We're fully in an oppressive regime, and it's literally the people that are honorable, decent folk who go and work as the people that work right next to these folks. And they don't even know.
And I can't remember where I got this statistic, but it was years back. And the statistic was that approximately 40% of the population of the United States was German. If you understand Operation Paperclip was much bigger than what you think it was. See, after World War II, Germany expatriated 10 million Germans. Where do you think most of them came? Land of opportunity, of course. This is why I speak about Hitler's willing executioners. That's why I have no problem wearing this. And yeah, maybe I do look quite familiar to like Hitler. I'm German. My grandparents were some of those that immigrated. I'm on it for a fucking reason. It's a very sad day when I have to get up at 58 years of age and remind the local city council that we are slowly becoming Hitler's willing executioners. And they all sat there stunned. I don't care if it hurts you. That's the reality. I see it, and I'm going to show you, because you're going to sit there even after I come forth with this hold harmless indemnification thing and still say I'm just doing my job. For the most part, I'm sure. That's my expectation. I have faith that he'll do better than that, but my expectation certainly isn't too high. And I don't suggest anybody let it get that way. It's time to put your foot down and start meaning business. You're full growth, boys and girls. With that, I think we're at the end of our stream for tonight. I appreciate the information again that you brought forth, Steve. It's helped enlighten me to how these bonds work at the local level, when for a long time I was concentrating on that Treasury direct. But now this is becoming more and more accessible as more and more people are comprehending it. So thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. There is an element that you do have to untie from the federal, but untying from the federal is really not that difficult once you find the process. It's the state and your local government. They are the ones that are the true gatekeepers for anything you're trying to do. So those of you who are aspiring to do this stuff, do not quit. It is hard. It is not easy. It is not for the meek. But the bottom line is you just have to, number one, have the number one muscle I got right now is my faith. And I'm not a religious person. I am a spiritual person, and that I understand that God is in me and that God is moving this to a different plane. So you have to be ready to elevate and ascend, because you cannot stay where you are. If you do, you're going to be lost in the land of make-believe.
Yeah, and this means ascending in obligations and responsibilities too, folks. You got to quit being lazy and taking upon the convenience and comfort, and understand that if you're truly going to be self-governing, then you have to step up in fighting for your rights and liberties, that you have a responsibility and obligation that's going to continue to grow. If you expect for yourself to become greater and greater, then you have to expect to be able to take on greater and greater responsibilities, duties, and obligations. This is inherent in reason and logic. So again, it's time to grow up.
Yeah, every generation has had to fight some form of evil, and of course is in the mind. The stuff you read, they've poisoned everything. There's nothing that does not have their poison in it. So the art of what Wiz is teaching here is learning to understand the fundamentals of the terms that they create, and then you have to adjust based on whatever market you're going to read the stuff in, because it's like I said in an email today, I'm all football, so like people say Peyton Manning's famous for saying Omaha. Well, Omaha just means a city in Nebraska to normal folk, but if you're in the game, Omaha means an adjustment, a change, or some kind of call for the team to make something different.
Right. It's just a different codex. So just like the U.S. code, it's got a code and then it's enumerated. Same there. They'll have a Omaha 51 or an Omaha 21, Omaha 42.
And you could go, and I played on 8 teams. So I would go one team and fire meant everybody blitz the gap. And then on the next team, fire meant a twist between the guard and the tackle. In each one of these jurisdictions modify the words based on what they want it to do. And the confusing part is they just switch and flip. And just as he was breaking down the SLGS, I've been at SLGS for years, and he just brought about more things that made my head hurt. So I'm just telling you, it's not for the meek.
Yeah, it's a matter of, like you said, ascending, a higher comprehension. Man, I get so disturbed when I keep thinking about our average reading comprehension of 7th or 8th grade.
Well, they just poison everything. So
yeah,
they purposely make it. We understood it one way in our generation, and then the next generation they changed it. So every time they're flipping it, I mean, you got to keep up. I mean, I remember when they said new math, it's like, what's wrong with the old math? That didn't make any sense. But that's just what they do. And it's all about keeping us off of the fundamentals, and they do everything they can to pollute your family. So if your family's in disarray and your home is in disarray, then it's easy to keep you out here in the wilderness, not knowing what they're truly doing. So if you're hearing this message, please heed the message. And, you don't have to get a lot of direction. You just need something to kind of point you in the right direction. Um,
Yep.
that's what's helped me this far. So it's nice to finally be at a point in time where there's other people doing the same things. We all got our own tasks. Do your job. Do not try to do somebody else's job. Do what you is before you. And we do
Yep.
that, and we'll find our way out of this mess. But thank you for having me. I absolutely appreciate being here,
You
and
bet.
hope I can do it more often.
You bet. And thanks again for your great work with Danny. You guys didn't hear he helped his brother Danny get released from the Who Scout down there in Texas and back on the road again. So
Yeah.
God bless you, brother.
God bless you too. Appreciate you.
You bet. And Iman says she's got a success for us. So we're gonna put her up and let her discuss it. Please make sure you're close to your mic and clear and concise, sister. I appreciate it. Love you.
Greetings. Can you hear me, brother?
Let me check your mic. If you get just as close as possible. Mic is up all the way. Um,
Ye-
just make sure you're close to the mic there. You good? Okay, now we don't hear you at all, sister. You there, sister? We lost you somewhere. There's some action.
Can you hear
You
me,
there?
brother?
There we go. We can hear you now.
Right. Unless I do it through my headset, I'll have to sign into the computer. But without kissing the phone, I'm close enough.
All right. Well, we'll
What
do
I
our
do
best.
want to say, okay, yes, I'm good. What I do want to say, because my testimony is, I've always been walking. They messing. My bike is being messed with. I'm gonna go on the computer. Hopefully. Um, hold on. Yeah. Hold on.
Yes, everything is within the mind, and one has to relearn from the indoctrination. I urge people all the time, please unlearn what you've learned. Go back and get a concise English handbook. Concise English handbook. And as soon as she gets signed into the computer, we'll bring her up on the new one. Yes, reading is fundamental.
Brother, it's not letting me sign in right away. I hope you can hear me.
All right, well, we'll just do the best we can with what we got, sister.
Okay, so the thing is,
Well, we lost you again.
the thing is, my testimony is of the Most High, and my calling is my true calling that was given to me from birth is the child of God, divine child of God at that. And my whole entire life I didn't know why. But I now know my journey, and I was fortunate. The Most High is here in the physical form, and I've been fortunate. I've been so fortunate to be face to face with the Most High, the Great Mother and the Great Father. And this eclipse, the change, is for the showing of the great mother and the great father. They will display themselves within the sky. So one just has to go within their heart, and you just have to know who you are. And just like the scripture said, you can't carry any weight. You just have to free your mind and your heart and your body and your soul, and then everything will be revealed to you. It will be given to you through your mind, your mind's eye.
Yeah, and that's a matter of like I think we talk about quite often is overcoming that ego, people. It's not about being the one that knows everything. It's about continuously learning because there is so much to learn. In that, you must know that other people have plenty to learn as well. So where are they along that path of learning? And that's the single most inherent problem that we have. And the particulars of recognizing that are most difficult because nobody ever teaches that. Everybody has this expectation of equality. And as soon as you turn 18, you're supposed to be as equal as the 70-year-old man that has 50 years behind him of wisdom. It's not the way it works.
And again, that gets back to what I was saying about the destruction of your household, in that you don't have the hierarchy of your family in which you're passing the wisdom from one generation to the other. It's just in complete disarray. Uh, the parental structure is completely torn apart, so you're forced to figure things out on your own.
Yeah, and that's keeping your houses in order. I've been having a complicated time with that in my life here lately, and it's a matter of you got to learn how to put your foot down and mean it. And it doesn't matter if somebody else along that hierarchy down below you gets hurt. Again, it's time to be full-grown boys and girls. And if you're the boss and you're not a slave to the municipality, then you need to learn how to put them in in their place, just like you would a wife or a child or a pet. It all works the same way. There's a hierarchy of a social construct. Most people have it wrong. They think they have a job and therefore they have some kind of authority over people. No. That's just a social construct for commerce. It has nothing to do with the actual social hierarchy. And with that, we come to the end of our stream. You guys got anything to say on the way out?
No, thanks for your input.
No, brother. The only thing I have to say, all glory, like you say all the time, all glory to the Most High, all glory to Him. And, as long as you keep the faith, you can't lose.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for coming up tonight again, Steve. Again, like I said, I appreciate what you put forth there. That's a true key in what we're dealing with. And that's because we have to learn how to execute our own decisions in relations to the local communities that we're in. And therefore, we have to know that hierarchy. And that starts with the mayor. So thank you much again. You guys have a blessed night. And you know me.
All right. Love you, Keith. Appreciate you, bro. Take care.
Keith, one thing I want to say about the mayor, if you think about the mayor, the female horse is really the mayor. And I yield. It starts with matriarchy.
You might have a point there because that's part of the problem is the patriarchy.
Right. So it's all matriarch. You know what I'm trying to say. I
Yep.
love you, brother.
Yep. All right. With that, you guys know me.
Take care. Talk at
You bet. You too, Steve. And y'all know me. I love you. But I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. And that's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. And that's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night. Bye now.